We continue now at the top of Daf Lamed Gimel Lamed Beis in Meseches Yoma. This is Yoma Daf 33b. The Gemara here is in the middle of answering the question, why does the Dishon Mizbeach HaPnimi, the cleaning out of the ashes of the inner Mizbeach, why is that before the Hatavas Chomesh Neiros, before the cleaning out of the ashes of 5 of the candles of the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash? And so the Gemara here is answering, the reason is because Ein Ma'avir Nala Mitzvahs, you're not supposed to pass up on mitzvahs, and as the Gemara explains, V'chi Ayil Lehechol B'Mizbeach Paga B'Reisha. When a person is entering the Heichol of the Beis HaMikdash, they first end up at the Mizbeach, and then they arrive at the menorah. The Tanya, as we learned in a Brisa, Shulchan B'Tzafon, the Shulchan is in the north of the Beis HaMikdash, Mashach Men HaKosel, Shtei Amos, it's 2 Amos away, Shtei Amos Umechza, it's 2.5 Amos away from the wall, Umenorah B'Dara, Meshuchem Men HaKosel, Shtei Amos Umechza, the menorah is in the south part of the Beis HaMikdash, and it is 2.5 Amos away from the wall. Mizbeach Memutza V'Omed Be'emtza, the Mizbeach is in the middle of the Beis HaMikdash, Umashach Klape Chutz Kiman, it's a little bit towards the doorway, meaning it's the first thing that you arrive at as you're entering the Beis HaMikdash. The Gemara says, V'nukme lahadayu, why is it set up like that? Why not have it that it's right in the middle? The Mizbeach should be right between the Shulchan and the menorah. And the Gemara says, Kevan Dechsiv, since the Pasuk says, V'es HaMenorah nochach HaShulchan, it says that the menorah should be opposite the Shulchan. But Inan Dechazu HaDadi, we want it to be that they can see each other, and the Mizbeach should not be in between them. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rava says, Shma Minomi de Reish Lakish, we see from Reish Lakish who says, Ein Ma'avir Nala Mitzvahs, you're not allowed to pass up mitzvahs. Avure Dara Totefta Aser, it's Aser to pass up the tefillin of the arm for the tefillin shel rosh. Rashi says, Avure Dara Totafta La'acher tefillin shebizroa b'shvil tefillin shel rosh. If you were going to put on the tefillin on your arm after the tefillin shel rosh, also that's going to be a problem to have bizroa pagatchila, because a person first arrives at the arm, then they arrive at the rosh, so the arm has to be worn first, as the Gemara says. Hey Chiyavid, what should the person do? Midra letotefta, first you do the arm, then you do the tefillin shel rosh. Rashi says, Hey Chiyavid midra letotefta min hazroa yavo al rosh yaniach shebizroa tchila v'yachkach yaniach shel rosh. First you should put on the tefillin shel yad, and then you should put on the tefillin shel rosh. The Gemara continues quoting again the statement of Abaye from the previous Amud, V'atavas chomesh neiros, the cleaning out of the 5 neiros of the menorah, kodem ladam hatamid, that comes before the blood of the carbon tamid, v'dam hatamid kodem latavas shtei neiros, and then the blood of the carbon tamid, that comes before the cleaning out of the 2 remaining neiros of the menorah. So the Gemara says, my time, and what's the reason for this? Why is it in this particular order? Amar Abaye says, Ahu baboker deshnei gezirei eitzim. The term baboker by the 2 logs of wood, delot tzrichi, those are not needed, so shadinu lahacha, you use those words over here in order to establish the proper order. Rashi over here says, baboker deshnei gezirin, delot tzarich, you don't need those psukim where it says baboker by the 2 logs of wood, it's not needed. To amr machshir adif, we already said in the previous summit, the reason why the shnei gezirin go where they go is because machshir is adif. Those are machshir, those are a hechshir, it's a preparation for what's to come regarding the Ketorah, so therefore again the baboker by the shnei gezirin is going to be extra, so therefore shadin and lahacha, so Rashi says you have to put them over here, meaning shazum midah batorah, this is one of the ways the Torah is darshaned, davar she'ino inyan lo teneyu inyan l'chaver, if you don't need a word in one place, you put it somewhere else, so that's exactly what we do over here. We use the baboker by the shnei gezirei eitzim, and as the Gemara explains, chad shadya lahatavas chamesh neiros, one of those bokers you use for hatavas chamesh neiros, deliktami ladam hatamid, it says that the hatavas chamesh neiros comes before the blood of the carbon tamid. The chad shadya ladam hatamid, now the other one of the words baboker, you use that for the blood of the carbon tamid, the nekadme lahatavas shtei neiros, to say that it goes before the cleaning out of the remaining 2 neiros of the menorah. And the Gemara now explains, chad shadya lahatavas chamesh neiros, one of them you use for the hatavas chamesh neiros, the lekadmi ladam hatamid, that it should go before the dam hatamid, the hacha telasa v'hacha trei, because over here you have 3 times baboker, and over here you have 2 times baboker, 3 comes before 2. V'chad shadya ladam hatamid, the nekadmi lahatavas shtei neiros, and then one of them we use by the carbon tamid, by the blood of the carbon tamid, and that says that it should go before the hatavas shtei neiros, afagav the hacha trei v'hacha trei. Now even though by both of these cases, dam hatamid and hatavas shtei neiros, it has 2 babokers, mechaper adif, it's better to go with the mechaper, the dam hatamid is a mechaper, it brings kapara, so it goes before the hatavas shtei neiros. Rashi over here says, meaning batavas neros, ksib baboker baboker. So first of all, by hatavas neros, it says the words baboker baboker. Now we're adding another time baboker using from the Shnei Gzirei Eitzim. Chad, that's another one. Hatulasa, so you have three babokers when it comes to the hatavas chamish neros. Uvitamin, and by the blood of the carbon tamin, ksivas hakeves hachot ta'aseh baboker. It says the word baboker once. Now we add the baboker again from the Shnei Gzirin. Kidamar chad shadi ledam atamid. Again, you're throwing it over here by the dam atamid, so that gives you two by the dam atamid. And afagav da'achatrei v'achatrei. Now, even though when it comes to the dam atamid, it's the same number of babokers as it is by the hatava shtei neros. Hani mechapri sha'ula mechaperes alasei va'alosa seishenitik lasei lekamon bepirkin. We say that the carbon tamid, is a mechaper and on aseis. If a person transgresses on a mitzvah asay, and also if a person transgresses a mitzvah los asay, shenitik lasay, so therefore it goes before the hatava shtei neros. But the Gemara continues, Amar le Rapapa li Abaye, Rapapa says to Abaye, ve'imochad shadi l'dishin mizbeach hapnimi. Why don't we take one of those babokers by the Shnei Gzirei Eitzim and instead use it by the dishin mizbeach hapnimi, by the cleaning out of the ashes of the inner mizbeach, the nekadme l'dam hatamid, and that will tell us that the dishin mizbeach hapnimi goes before the dam hatamid, the hachatz los of a hachatray, because you're going to have three babokers by the dishin mizbeach hapnimi, and you're going to have only two by the dam hatamid. V'chad shadi l'dam hatamid, and then put one of the other babokers by the dam hatamid, diniktom lahatavas chamish neros. That will tell you that dam hatamid goes before the hatavas chamish neros. The afagav, the hachatray, that even though by both, again in this case of the dam hatamid and in the case of hatavas chamish neros, it's going to be two times baboker, mechaper adif. The mechaper is going to go first, meaning the dam hatamid is going to go first. And the Gemara says to that, imkain if suke b'mai. The problem with going in that direction is that you have nothing interrupting the hatavas chamish neros and the hatavas shtei neros. You really need to have something in between them. And Rashi over here explains, imkain de mekademes leila dam hatamid. If the dam hatamid is going to go first before the hatavas chamish neros, if suke b'mai pasak la hatavas haneros, you need to have something interrupting between the chamish neros and the shtei neros. What's going to be the interruption? Li Abashal, that follows the opinion of Abashal. Kevon de islay meitiv v'yachar kach yaktir. Because what does Abashal say? He says first you do the hatavas haneros and then you do the ketores. So dam hatamid taktim v'aktoras ta'acher. According to Abashal, it comes out that the dam hatamid is before the hatavas haneros and the ketores is after. Uve'eza avoda tafsiku. You have no avoda to go in between. V'im tomer my ichbis loch. Now you might say, who cares? Why do you need something in between? So hanichol Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish damar ein hafsakos and el laharbos haregesh mahalech psios v'kol tchilas avodas ba'azora. So the Gemara is going to say that's good according to Reish Lakish. He says the only reason you interrupt is it gets people walking in the azora, it gets people doing avoda. So then that's not necessarily so important. Shapir yesh lach lomer yafsik beineim lahamtin bein elu laelu lotzes v'likones v'lotei avoda bein time. You can just simply say according to Reish Lakish again, as we're going to see in the Gemara in a moment, that just take a little interruption between them, and that's going to cause, you don't need to do an avoda, you just do some kind of interruption. It causes people to move around, as the Gemara over here says. This all works out okay according to Reish Lakish, who says, what's the reason why we do hatavas chamish neros, and then later we do the hatavas shtei neros, kedei lahargish kol ha'azara kul, it's in order that there should be a commotion in the azara. So Shapir, it's not a problem, you just do an interruption without having an avoda in between. Elul Rabbi Yochanan D'Amar, but according to Rabbi Yochanan, who says Baboker Chelkeyu L'Shnei Bekarim, he says we learn from the pasuk Baboker to divide it into two mornings. So Ma'ikol Lemema, what are you going to say? You have to interrupt with an avoda, as Rashi over here says. Elul Rabbi Yochanan the Darish Baboker Behitivo Chelkeyu LeBeis Neiros L'Shnei Bekarim. You have to divide the two sets of Neiros, or the Beis Neiros, the two Neiros, to two Bokers. Elu Yekadmu Lavoda Achas. In other words, these have to go before a particular avoda. Alma Yesh Avoda Beineim. See, according to that, it comes out there has to be an avoda between the Atavas Chamish Neiros and the Atavas Shtei Neiros. V'halekol Amemer Afseke B'Dishon Mizbeach HaPnimi. Now, you can't say that the interruption is with the Dishon Mizbeach HaPnimi. Di'emkein Demakdim Atavas Hey Neiros L'Dishon, because if that's the case, what's going on? Then it comes out that the five Neiros, the cleaning out of the ashes of the five Neiros, come before the Dishon Mizbeach HaPnimi. Havelei Mavir Ala Mitzvahs. That's going to get back to the problem of passing up mitzvahs, because the Mizbeach should go before the Neiros. The Avoda Sulekol Haktim Mekom L'Sita Beinem. You have no other avoda to put between them. Shekulam Sturas Kana Pia Mikros. It's all arranged according to the Psukim. So according to Rabbi Yochanan, you have a real problem over here. And the Gemara continues now with another question on Abaya. Again, Abaya said said that the words baboker by the Shnei Gezirah Eitzim are extra, and therefore we apply them in other places in order to establish the daily service, the order of the daily service in the Beis HaMikdash. So Amar Le Ravina Rav Ashi, so Ravina said to Rav Ashi, Hi baboker de Eitzim mi miyaser. Are the words baboker by the Shnei Gezirah Eitzim even extra at all? We can use them. Hami boy le lagufe, we can use them for the Shnei Gezirah Eitzim itself. To kamar achmana nekadmu l'marocha shniya shel ketores. Maybe what the Torah is saying is that you set up the marocha gedola, that's the main marocha, the main set of wood on the mizbeach, and then before you do the marocha shniya shel ketores, baboker tells us that you got to put the Shnei Gezirah Eitzim, you got to put the 2 logs on top of the marocha gedola. So it's telling us the Shnei Gezirah Eitzim go before the marocha shniya shel ketores. So the Gemara says, Omar Le, so he said back to him, this is Rav Ashi saying back to Ravina, that's not true. We already said that when it talks about the Shnei Gezirah Eitzim, it says you put it on the marocha gedola and not on the other marocha. Michlal di'isa l'chaverta, that implies on the contrary, that both marochas have already been set up, and the actual order is first you have the marocha gedola, then you have the marocha shniya shel ketores. You only put on the Shnei Gezirah Eitzim after you have the marocha shniya shel ketores. And the Gemara continues, Ma'ishno di'avid hatavas chomesh neiros bereisha na'avid hatavas shtei neiros bereisha. A general question, why is it that you do the cleaning out of the ashes of the 5 candles first, and then later you do the 2 remaining candles? Why do you do it the other way around? Do 2 candles before the 5 candles. Gemara explains, Kevan da'aschil b'hu, once you start with the neiros of it ruba, you might as well do the majority of the neiros, and then you'll leave the smaller amount for the end. The Gemara says, okay, v'navid shis, you might as well do 6 of the candles and leave 1 for the end. So to that the Gemara says, Amar Kra, because the pasuk says, Be'itivo es ha-neiros yakti reno. It says you're going to do the neiros in plural. Ve'ein neiros pechusas mishtayim. There's no neiros less than 2, so you have to leave off at least 2 neiros. So you start off with 5. Again, then you interrupt with an avoda, and then you do the remaining 2. And then the Gemara continues discussing the order of Hatava Shtei Neiros Kodemis L'Ktoris. It says that the 2 Neiros, that goes before the Ketoris. That's learned straight from the Pasuk, the Yomar Kra, because the Pasuk says, Behetivo es ha-Neiros. First it says you set up the Neiros, or you clean out the Neiros, V'hadar Yakti Rena, and then it says the word Yakti Rena, which is a reference to the Ketoris. Uketoris La'Evar, and then it says that the Ketoris go before the Evar and before the limbs that are put on the Mizbeach. The Tanya that we learned in a Braisa, Yuktam Dover Shenemar Bo Baboker, by something where it says the words Baboker, that should go first. L'davar shelo nemar bo ela boker echad bilvad. That should precede a place where it only says boker 1 time. Somewhere where it says boker twice should go before boker echad. And the Gemara continues, ve'varim lemincha. It said before again that the limbs go before the korban mincha. The Tanyas we learned in a Braisa, minayin shelo yeh davar kodim l'tamid shel shachar. How do you know that nothing should go before the korban tamid in the morning? Rashi explains, minayin shelo yeh davar niton al marocha gedola. Nothing should be put on the marocha gedola kodem le'evari hatamid, before you put the evarim of the korban tamid. And we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Lamed Daled Amud Aleph.